All right, I want to bring up this topic, something that I've touched on in the past, but I'm sure most of you guys may have not seen it or forgotten it. But it's a topic that a lot of people will have interest in, and it has to do with the fact that there is a pesticide out there called glyphosate, which is on just about every crop out there these days. It's basically Roundup, and it has been used extensively for the last several decades. It replaced some other, I guess, more toxic pesticides. And some people are concerned as does that have an impact on human health, human metabolism, and so on and so forth. And so there have been a number of cancer cases where awards have been given primarily to people that work with glyphosate, guys that spray it on everything and they're exposed to very, very high levels. So we know that certainly, at least in very, very high levels, juries have determined that glyphosate was at fault there. Now, it's interesting that mammals tend to metabolize glyphosate and break it down to where it doesn't seem to accumulate. And so this is a point here. And so if you are worried about being exposed to glyphosate, and whether you should be or not is perhaps debatable. I think being safe may be the best option here. Certainly we know that glyphosate, whether it impacts our tissues ultimately if we metabolize it, but it will definitely impact our gut microbiome. There's no doubt about that. And so we know that a lot of diseases seem to start in the gut, autoimmune diseases, inflammatory disorders and things like that. So it could be plausible that the glyphosate-induced changes to the gut microbiota may have a downstream effect. And so that's clear. So what foods would you think have the least amount of glyphosate and which ones have the most? Well, it's interesting. So there was a large review done in Canada a few years back, and they looked at thousands and thousands of samples of food, and they tested for glyphosate residues, and they have a minimum threshold or maximum threshold. And the category that had basically the least exposure that showed up in there were animal products, milk and meat. Basically, none of the products sampled had any glyphosate residue in them. And they said it makes sense because they know these mammalian animals will metabolize it out. So eating meat from a mammal, so beef would be a good example of that. Your exposure is going to be very, very low to potentially none at all. Whereas the products that had the most exposure were things like grains, particularly wheat, barley, things like that, corn, and then many peas, beans, legumes, things like that. Things that are staple of a vegan diet, perhaps, if you want to get protein. So if you're trying to avoid glyphosate, in your food, well, then meat's going to be a better option for you compared to these more plant-based pea proteins and things like that, which everybody's trying to push upon us. So interesting observation. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think glyphosate is a problem? Do you think it could be impacting our gut and perhaps downstream leading to effects like perhaps autoimmune disease? It'd be interesting to see. Anyway, like I said, I'm happy eating a lot of meat. Today is World Carnivore Day number 6. I'm starting out with a couple of ribeyes. So far, I am down 1 pound. I wasn't planning on losing weight and don't really expect to because I pretty much eat for the most part this way all the time. The only difference this month, I'm sticking to strictly red meat, beef, and beef, salt, and water. Whereas in other times I'll add eggs and some dairy and things like that. So I might lose a couple pounds. We'll see. But I'm having a lot of fun with this, and hopefully you guys are too. All right, we will talk to you guys later. Take care now. Bye-bye.